Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another exciting and inspiring Unlocking Archaeology lecture series. My name is Tatendam, and I'm representing the Southern African Archaeology Student Council and Society. With me today are my fellow council members, Nithya, Precious, and Pumi, and we are happy to present to you one of our special guests for this Unlocking Archaeology lecture series. And it's unfortunate that it's not my job to present this special guest to you because Pumi has got the honors to actually introduce this guest to you. So without wasting much of your time, allow me to hand over to Pumi so that she can give us a full introduction to our guests. Thank you very much. Over to you, Pumi.
Thank you so much, Tatenda. Hi, everyone. I have the great honor of introducing our new guest. So our guest today is Dr. Joshua Kumbani, and he is a research associate, postdoctoral research fellow at the School of Geography, Archaeology and Environmental Studies with the Rock Art and Research Institute based at the University of the Witwatersrand. He is a ReCentring AfroAsia Fellow. His current research is investigating the existence of musical instruments in the rock art of Eastern Cape, and he's also investigating the possibility of having archaeological bone clappers from the later Stone Age sites in South Africa. Joshua's PhD research focused on the evidence for music and sound production in the later Stone Age of Southern Africa, using music-related archaeological artifacts, experimental approach, and rock arts. His research interests lie in music archaeology, experimental archaeology, and rock art. And today he'll be giving us a presentation based on his recent findings on music and archaeology. Thank you so much, Josh, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mpumi, and thank you very much to all the council members for having me today. Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Kumbani, as Mpumi said. Today I'm going to present on a topic, music archaeology, a snapshot from Southern Africa. So what I'm going to present today is part of my work that I've done as my PhD research and what I'm currently doing at the moment. So I will start my presentation by a quote from Brown, 1971. Although the living sound of prehistoric music may be lost, archaeological research can retrieve the instruments which produce the sound and reconstruct much of the context of the performance of the music. So basically what this quote means is that aspects of music like vocal singing cannot be reconstructed from the archaeological record, but however, we can still find some remains from the archaeological record which can give us clue and hints of music and sound production in the past. Can go to the next slide. Music archaeology is defined as the study of past musical behaviors and sound. It also encompasses the analysis of music-related artifacts and archaeoacoustics, which is the investigation of the effect of sound on the past societies. But however, the study of music archaeology in Southern Africa is still at its infant or is still on its developmental stage. There could be a number of reasons why music archaeology in Southern Africa is still developing. And one of the reasons is that most musical instruments, they are made of organic materials which do not survive for too long in the archaeological record. So we do not find them when we do our excavations. And also music related artifacts sometimes are difficult to identify. Can go to the next slide. I just want to touch briefly on the sources of music archaeology. So music archaeology relies on a number of sources, and Some of the sources include the archaeological artifacts or the physical material that we can recover from the archaeological record. In some instances, during our excavations, we can find direct finds, for example, bone tubes, Indira keys, or iron gongs. Also, music archaeology relies on iconography, which means the identification, the description of paintings, and for example, rock art and figurines. So in rock art, we may find musical instrument depictions, and in some cases, there are figurines which point to music production in the past. For example, in West Africa, there are some um, figurines or plaques of people playing drums. And also, music archaeology relies on ethnography and the historical sources. So, since the archaeological record is very limits us to a certain extent, we can't find all the uh, all the remains from archaeological digs. But sometimes we consult historical sources as well as ethnographic sources as to what kind of musical instruments were they used in the past. You will find out that some of the instruments are recorded historically or they are known from ethnographic record. But however, you will find out that in some cases, none of those instruments have been recovered from the archaeological record. And hence, ethnography and historical sources will become an important source for music archaeological studies. We can move to the next slide. I'll just touch on the development of music archaeology in general. So music archaeology started around the 1970s, and it started in Europe and then expanded to other parts of the world. Uh, when music archaeology started, it benefited immensely from experimental archaeology because people were trying to replicate some of the music related artifacts which they found from the archaeological digs. So the whole idea of conducting experiments in music archaeological studies is to test the organology of the instruments or to test what kind of sound these instruments could have produced such that people have an idea of the capability of the artifact of the sound which it can produce. And as a result, you find out that in Europe, there are some specialized groups that have emerged as a result of music archaeological studies. For example, the International Study Group of Music Archaeology is one of the examples that I can give. So you'll find out that in Europe, music archaeology is a well-developed discipline where people have like annual annual conferences where people just present on music archaeology. But you'll find out that in other parts of the world, for example, here in Southern Africa, we are not yet at that stage. So it's still something that is new, that is still uh, developing. We can move on to the next slide. You'll find out that in South Africa, there is there are researches that have been conducted in the past which somehow relate to music archaeology. But sometimes you will find out that uh, they might not have used the term music archaeology as such. But however, this research uh, links with what music archaeology is. So you will find out that rock art researchers have recorded uh, the musical balls that are found in South Africa and in Namibia. So it is known that sometimes the hunting bow can be used as a musical instrument. So its function then just changes from it being used as a hunting, as a tool to a musical instrument. And sometimes people put what are called resonators to enhance sound. So in the rock art, they are both resonated bowls and bowls that do not have resonators. And these are found in South Africa and in Namibia. In South Africa, the musical bowls are found in the Eastern Cape as well as in KwaZulu-Natal region in the Drakensberg Mountains. But however, it is important to note that no musical bowls have been recovered from archaeological record. The other research which links with music archaeology research was conducted by Ruth 2009, where she was trying to understand the biological adaptations of hominins with particular focus on development of dance and vocal singing. So her research focused on habitual bipedalism and the development of the vestibular system in the ear, as well as the development in the brain size. So here the idea was that when the hominins started to walk on two or bipedalism, it is assumed or thought that by then the hominins could have developed the ability to dance. And also when they developed the vestibular system in the ear and also the development of the brain size, is that it is assumed or thought that by that time they could sing and also they could hear. So it's one of the researches which tries to link music archaeology from an archaeological perspective. You can go to the next slide. In South Africa, there are examples of archaeoacoustic studies, which means how sound impacted the way people in the past thought. For example, Rifkin in 2009 investigated the sound on the location of Klipbeck, one engraving site in Tswalu, Kalahari Reserve in the Northern Cape Province. So an experiment was done to test the echoes of the rock gong, and it was observed that the echoes are clearly audible from the rock engravings. So in this case, the rock engraving site is in the same vicinity with the rock gong. So when they played the rock gong, they realized that the spot where the sound of the gong is more audible is the exact location of the engraving. So they thought that um, the choice of them making the engraving was influenced by the echoes of the sound of the rock gongs. So this shows how some people uh, were conducting archaeoacoustic research and inferring that the aspect of how sound moves or travels in a landscape could have influenced some of the activities which people were conducting in the past, for example, making rock engravings. We can move to the next slide. I'm going to talk about some examples of the music or sound producing artifacts that have been recovered from Southern Africa. Evidence of music-related artifacts from Southern Africa comes from later Stone Age, Iron Age, and historical context. Such implements include spinning discs, bull roarer, whistles, thumb piano keys, musical bells, gongs, a trumpet, and bone tubes that could have been used as flutes. These artifacts they fall excuse me, these artifacts fall into two categories, which are aerophones and idiophones. So the reason why I use terms music and sound producing in artifacts is that
Sometimes it is difficult to tell whether a certain sound is musical or not. So it is safe sometimes to say musical slash sound producing, because sometimes we might not be sure if a certain sound is really musical. We can move to the next slide. So this map shows the size distribution across Southern Africa, with where some of the musical instruments have been recovered. So as you can see on the map, you realize that there are the Southern Cape coast side, um, and then we move upwards to the border between South Africa and Zimbabwe, where Mapungubu and Tulamela are, and then into Zimbabwe, where some Iron Age sites yielded some musical instruments, as well as in Zambia, also where we find music-related artifacts from Iron Age contexts. And then in Mozambique, there's also Sofala, which is the coastal site where an ivory trumpet was recovered. So as you can see on the map, you realize that there are gaps as in Africa is concerned. So, for example, in Botswana, Namibia, Angola, Lesotho, Swatini, you realize that there is none uh, that is known in terms of music-related artifacts that have been recovered from these countries. We can move on to the next slide. I'm going to define what aerophones and idiophones are, because these are the only musical instruments categories that are known so far from the evidence which comes from the Southern African region. Aerophones are musical instruments that produce sound as a result of the vibrating air. For example, flutes and bull they are aerophones, so they rely on air for them to produce sound. And idiophones are instruments that make sound as a result of the vibration made by the instrument itself. And they are also subdivided into various categories according to how they are played. And these categories include percussion idiophones, such as xylophones, and then scraped, such as rasps, and then shaken idiophones, such as rattles, and then plugged idiophones, such as tampiano or mbira. So far, there are no chordophones and membranophones that are known from the archaeological record, and the chordophones are instruments which produce sound through the vibration of the string. For example, things like a guitar. And then membranophones are instruments which produce, which have got a membrane, which produces sound as a result of vibration. For example, your drum. We can move on to the next slide. I'm going to talk about a sound producing implement that was recovered from Classes River mouth, but it was recovered from the later Stone Age context. So this slide shows a spinning disc, and the brownish implement is a replica, and the other one, which has got dotted lines, is a drawing of the actual implement, which was made by Singer and Wise. It does show how the implement looked like, because it broke when they were excavating it. So this implement was found from the Upper Median, uh, uh, later Stone Age, phase 2, dating to around 4,800 BP, and it is associated with the cable juice industry.
And according to Singer and Weimer, they called this implement a vira vira or a toy. So when they found this implement, they thought that it was used as a toy. And I think you might be aware or you might be familiar with an implement like this, which can be made from any flat oblong thing. For example, some people flatten the bottle tops, especially the kids, and then they will put a string and then they will wheel it and spin it, and then when it spins, it produces like a whirring sound of some sort. So this is where the whole idea of this implement having been used as a toy comes from. You can move on to the okay. I'm going to talk about buroras. So a burora is a flat oblong piece of either bone, wood, or stone with a hole at one end, and then a string is attached to it. So the burora shapes, they may vary from oval or rectangular, and sometimes you'll find out that they even have some serrated edges. So if a burora has got serrated edges, it produces a powerful sound than the one that does not have serrated edges. So the burora is either spun above your head in front or in front of you, or perpendicular and adjacent to the body. Sometimes you find out that when people are dealing with archaeological materials, in most cases, the function of an implement is is assumed based on the shape of an implement. But however, sometimes you find out that this may be misleading because a certain shape of an implement might look like it was being used for a certain purpose, but when you research more, you will then find out that no, actually, it is not the use of that implement. So sometimes experiments may inform us on what a certain implement was used for, unlike just relying on the form of an artifact and then we say this artifact was used for this purpose. We can move on to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about the Marquis River Water. This is shown on your slide as MR Fort. So this implement was previously interpreted as a pendant because of its form or its shape. And as you can see, it has got a hole on one end, which looks like the top. So the previous pre, previous interpretation was that this implement was used as a pendant, meaning that a string was put on that hole and then one would wear it as jewelry. But however, microscopic analysis results indicated concentration of useware on the lateral side of the perforation. So when I did the microscopic issue analysis of this implement, I realized that at the top and at the bottom of that hole, there is no much useware, so indicating that there was not much activity happening as compared to the lateral side, which are the sides of the hole. So this is where most useware concentration was. And these results, they made the experimental results of the replica of MR40. So in this research, a replica was made for this implement. Actually, there were four archaeological implements, and then we made some replicas for all of them. And then the replicas were spun as buroras because we wanted to test the hypothesis if the four pendants from Matis River were either pendants or they were used as bull rollers. So the results indicated that 3 of the pieces, as you can see other on the other diagram, 3 of the pieces which are MR37, MR205, and MR39, they had a useway that was concentrated at the top of the perforation, which somehow indicated that these pieces could have been worn as a pendant, because when you string something and it's hanging, the point of contact, which is the top, and the string that is used to string that implement, will cause friction to happen. And as a result, that's where you find more useful patterning, as you can see on the diagram. So the 3 implements were found out that they were not bull rollers, but they were rather used as pendants. But only MR40 had results which made the usual patterning of the replicas, which were on the lateral side. So the conclusion was that the MR40 piece, it was used as a bull roller, or it was fun. But however, it is also interesting to note that a bull roller is classified as an aerophone or as a musical instrument. But when you listen to its sound, it's a powerful whirring sound or a buzzing sound. So the debate now is, can we say that this powerful whirring sound is musical or not? But it is known from ethnographic evidence that some societies, for example, the Sen Kalahari Bushmen, they used a bull roarer during a musical procession. And this is according to NES 1972. So, what it means basically is what someone can call music might not be music to the next person. Because if the same Kalahari Bushmen were using this implement as a musical instrument, it means that to them the sound might have been musical. But if today, if we play this implement, I'm sure very few people would say that the sound is musical. So this shows how things may change through time, because back then, if it was used as a musical instrument, but now it's no longer used as a musical instrument. So it just shows how things change through time, and maybe music was developing like art until now, where we do not even see bull rollers in existence. We can move to the next slide. Whistles are also other archaeological artifacts that have been found from the archaeological record, which are also related to music and sound production. So whistles have been recovered from Mapungubwe site and K2. There are 2 clay whistles which have been described as pendant-shaped ceramic whistles. Ethnographically, whistles are known for signaling purposes, and sometimes they are used during musical performances. We can move to the next slide. So this slide is showing the clay whistle from K2, and as you can see, the whistle broke, but however the other part is missing. So the 2 pictures here are showing the same side of the whistle, and the other part is missing. So this piece was recovered from a burial context, and the whistle is dated around AD 1030 to around AD 1220. And this piece has got some decorations on it. and it has got a strand of comb stamping decoration on its body. And its dimensions are 45 millimeters in length, 42 millimeters width, and then uh, 29 millimeters in height. We can move to the next slide. This is the other clay whistle that was found from the Mapungubwe site. It is similar to the one that was found from K2, and this one is still complete. This whistle is dated around 1220 to around AD 1250, and it has got some decorations. It has got oblique lines of incisions and faint diamond mesh-like decoration on the lower part of the whistle on both sides of the whistle. It is 38 millimeters in length, 37 millimeters in width, and then 36 millimeters in height. We can move on to the next slide. Oh, before I, no, it's fine. Let me proceed. I'm going to talk about some piano keys or Mbira keys that have been recovered from the archaeological record. So far, the Mbira keys have been recovered from later Stone Age contexts in Zimbabwe, from sites like Great Zimbabwe, Kusukei, Danangombe, as well as in Zambia, from Ingombe Ilede. And that picture that you are seeing, it's a Mbira key that was recovered from the Great Zimbabwe site. Then move on to the next slide. So the Mbira as an instrument, it has got a long history. According to Kubik and Cook 2001, Mbira at some point was made using the raffia palm in West Central Africa, in Gabon, Southern Cameroon, and possibly Eastern Nigeria before the Exodus migration of the band. So what it means is that before we see the metal Mbira, before it was made from a raffia palm tree, before people started to forge iron to make tools and to make Mbira. So as you can see on this slide, that tree on top, that's the raffia palm tree, which was used to make the keys from Mbira before the advent of iron production. But we only know of this evidence from West Africa. We do not know of such evidence that people used plant-based Mbira keys in Southern Africa. Ethnographically, among the Shona people, the term piano is used during ancestral veneration ceremonies. And this is the same practice as well among the Venda people in South Africa. So we can see that there is something common about the instrument, which is that it is used mostly for ancestral veneration ceremonies, and also it is used for entertainment purposes as a musical instrument. And in Zimbabwe and other countries, it is a very common musical instrument that is used. And there are some musicians that have come from Zimbabwe, for example, Thomas Mapfumo and Stella Shwesh. Their music is well known for the Mbira flavor. And you read that the use of Mbira now, it is it's something that is spread globally. Even in Europe, you will find that there will be some Mbira musicians. We can move to the next slide. There are also musical bells or gongs that have been recovered from archaeological record in Southern Africa. The sites that have yielded musical gongs include Tulamela in South Africa, Great Zimbabwe, Dodo, Tomunungwa, Shamrock Mine in Zimbabwe, and Ingombe Ilede in Zambia. Tulamela and Ingombe Ilede gongs were recovered from burial contexts. It is interesting, especially when we look at the Tulamela gong, where it was found in association with a burial. And this burial is thought to have been, I think, someone of royalty because of the other material that were found in association with this burial, because they were gold beads as well, and a gong that was associated with that burial. So the conclusion was that this person was supposed, most probably, came from a royal family. And the musical bells occur in two types, as either single or double bells. It is also said that the musical bells were associated with royal people, and they were used to announce the arrival of the kings. This is according to Van Sien. That bell that you see, it was recovered from Great Zimbabwe site. So as you can see that the handle seems to be curving. So it was a double bell, but the other piece broke and it's missing. We can move on to the next slide. Iron bells or musical bells were found in Southern African archaeological contexts, but their source of origin is believed to be the Central African region. They probably got to Southern Africa through trade. So in Southern Africa, there is no evidence that directly links the musical bells to have been made in Southern Africa, because their source of origin is believed to be the Central African region. So they could have reached Southern Africa as a result of trade. And interestingly, you realize that musical bells are still used as musical instruments. I'll use an example of the late Yuma Sekela. He has got a video on YouTube where he's singing his song Stimela, and he was playing a single bell during a live performance. However, you will see that the shape has changed, but however, it's the same idea which has been carried from long back to the recent times. We can move on to the next slide. In Mozambique, at the coastal site of Sofala, there is an ivory trumpet which was recovered by Mr. Brian Christie from Salisbury, which is now Harare. One end of the ivory was protruding from the ground close to the wall foundations, where it was associated with imported Chinese ceramics and locally made clay pottery. And the size of this ivory trumpet is 48.3 centimeters in length. However, there is no accurate date for this aerophone, but it is estimated to date to around the 16th century onwards. So this piece is now housed at the University of Pretoria Museum, but unfortunately it broke. I was told that it It broke when I think during when it was being moved before the owner donated it to the University of Pretoria Museum. So now the other part that is missing is now fragmented. But however, when it was recovered, it was still intact. We can move on to the next slide. You'll find out that trumpets are not a common occurrence in the archaeological record of Southern Africa. And ivory trumpets are foreign in the Southern African region, but they have a long history in West Africa, Central Africa, for example, in Democratic Republic of Congo and on the East African coast. So you'll find out that it is funny that ivory trumpets are very rare in Southern Africa as compared to the other regions in Africa, because I think you can relate that ivory is one of the trading items which is known to have been used in Southern Africa by people in the past to trade with the Portuguese and also the Arabs. But however, they were using ivory for other purposes and not for making musical instruments. So the Sofala ivory trumpet can be regarded as a rare find, or maybe it came from these other regions, perhaps East Africa or Central Africa. In Ghana, for example, the Asande have been Kaera. This is an ivory trumpet ensemble comprising of 7 trumpets, and it belongs to the Royal Asande. The Asande believe that the trumpets have spiritual significance. In Southern Africa, trumpets are mostly made of sable and bone. But however, there is no evidence of any sable antelope bone that has been recovered from the archaeological record. We can move on to the next slide. There are archaeological bone tubes that have been recovered from the later Stone Age, Iron Age, and historical periods. These tubes have been recovered from sites like Marcus River, Nelson Bay Cave, Big Elders, Boom Plus, Wonderberg Shelter, Ode Post 1. All these sites are dotted along the southern Cape Coast, and then Chondo in Zambia. The main characteristics of these bone tubes is that they all lack finger holes. So you realize that when you look at the archaeological bone flutes that are known from other parts of the world, for example, the ivory flutes that were recovered from Germany, you realize that they've got some finger holes for tuning the sound when one is playing the flute. But however, the ones that we have here in Southern Africa, they do not have any finger holes. We can move on to the next slide. Some of the bone tubes have got incisions, cross hatching, and chevron pattern. So you will realize that some of the bone tubes from the archaeological record have got some neat decorations on them. And as you can see on this slide, the top picture has got a bone tube which has got a very neat diamond mesh. So it would require like a great skill for one to make such a pattern on something that is cylindrical. Some pieces are only cut at one end, and this could be whistles according to Phoebe's description of a whistle, which is something that is closed on the other side and then it is open on one end, like the second picture as you can see. So those pieces were recovered from Marcus River. And when I analyzed them, I thought that they could have been used as whistle because of the definition of what a whistle is. And I also think we can relate to the clay whistles that I talked about earlier from Mapungubwe. They are closed on one end and then they are open on the other side. So this is how a whistle can be identified. These bone tubes have been previously interpreted as beads and pendants or sucking tubes. However, these bone tubes could have been used as bone flutes, but this has to be investigated further. So previous interpretations were that the bone tubes from the archaeological record could have been used as beads or pendants. But when one looks at the length of some of these bone tubes, you will realize that it's not quite convincing to say that they could have been used as beads or as pendants, because some of them they are long as 18 centimeters. So imagine having a bead that is 8 centimeters long, and then you put a string, and then you wear it as a pendant. I don't think that will be appealing. So I thought they could have been used as bone flutes, because it is known from the ethnographic record that people used reed flutes. But however, these do not survive in the archaeological record. So I think in rare occurrences where people would find a bed, was mostly beds that got bones that are suitable for making bone tubes, then they would make the bone flutes. We can move on to the next slide. So I'm now going to talk about the relationship between rock art and music. Southern African hunter-gatherers rock art is associated with spiritual beliefs and ritual performances. And in the rock art, there are some dancing scenes that are associated with trance dance, and also it dance sometimes it usually accompanies music. Normally, where there is music, you will find people dancing. There are depictions of musical instruments and sound producing implements that are found in the Southern African rock art. We can move to the next slide. So this slide is showing a typical trance dance from Southern Drakensberg. And as you can see on this slide, you will realize that these people are dancing, and most of them, they are in a bending posture, which is one of the postures that indicate people who are in trance. And if you look closely, you will realize that these people have got leg rattles. So leg rattles, they can be used during a musical procession or during a trance dance, because the rattles, when one is dancing or is foot stamping, they produce a rhythm, and the rhythm is an important aspect when people are in a trance dance or when people are just dancing for entertainment. So you will realize that in most cases, the rock art depictions that have got implements that can be used as musical instruments, they are interpreted as trance dance, which is correct. But there is one aspect that is missing, that we all rush to say it's a trance dance, but people, they do not say much about how important music comes in during a trance dance. Because for one to go into trance, they should be singing dancing, and it's not a peak process for one to go into trance. So there is a investment of energy in form of singing, dancing, until someone gets to a certain point where they now go into trance. So my argument is when people are interpreting rock art, trance dances, we rush to conclude and say this is a trance dance. But what is the process that is involved for people to go into trance? So music is a catalyst for one to go into trance. But however, we do not get as much interpretation of what role music plays in trance dances when people are dealing with rock art. We can go to the next slide. So it is interesting to note that there is an archaeological burora that I spoke about from Marcus here. And coincidentally, there is a rock painting from the Cedarburg at a site called Doring River with 8 people that are swinging buroras. And this site has been published by Sarah Vos and Neil Rush in 2020. We can move on to the next slide where I will show you the zoomed images of the people who are swinging buroras. So this is an enhanced image of a person playing a burora from the side of Doring River. So as I was saying earlier that a burora sometimes you can swing it above your head. So as you can see that's an elongated hand, but when you see, you will see a string and then there's something at the end which looks like it's a burora. So from the previous images that I showed you, those 8 people, they are they look like they are swinging a burora, 8 of them. So it means that a burora is something that was commonly used in the past. Uh, I will give an example of one of the anthropologists called Edward Barnett Taylor, who once remarked that the occurrence of buroras in South Africa as well as in Australia is something that was supposed to be investigated. So what it basically means is that people in the past in South Africa as well as in Australia among the Australian Aborigines, they used the buroras. And what Taylor was saying was that he was intrigued by the fact that he had seen buroras being used in Australia and then seen buroras being used in South Africa. And then he was like, no, this has to be researched on. So it means a burora was something that was common back then, and hence its occurrence in the rock art as well as in the archaeological record of South Africa. But however, the big question will remain, is it a musical instrument or not? We can move to the next slide. Um, Musical bowls are also depicted in the rock art of Southern Africa. So musical board depictions are found in South Africa from the Eastern Cape as well as in the KwaZulu-Natal in the Drakensberg. So as you can see on figure A, there's a person who is playing a burora, sorry, a musical bowl, the one with a white face, and it looks like he has got an antelope head. So when we see antelope heads in rock art, they are mainly associated with trance. And the other person that is kneeling, they are clapping. So clapping also is an important aspect that we see in trance dances. And the second picture below, you can see a person who is sitting is playing a musical ball with a white stick that is being used to tap the string. And then on the far right, on figure C, you can see individuals who are playing resonated musical balls with some resonators to enhance sound, and they are using some sticks to play the balls. So the last picture C is from the KwaZulu-Natal region, from the Drakensberg Massif. We can move on to the next slide. So as I have said, musical balls are also found in Namibia, and they are dotted around the Gaurep region. So as you can see on this slide, these people are playing musical balls which do not have resonators like the previous slide. Um, the musical balls in South Africa, most of them, they have got resonators. But however, the musical balls that are found in Namibia, they do not have resonators. So this might be maybe a difference in culture or a difference in preference. But there is something that I want to draw your attention to. If you look at the image on my right, you will see that there is like a string which joins the bow staff and the bow string. So that process is called bracing. So when one braces a bow, you tie the string to the bow staff with the aim of you to enhance the sound. So depending on where you put your brace, sometimes you find out the other part is shorter and then the other part is longer. So when you play the other part that is longer, it will produce a different sound with the other part that is shorter. So it will also produce a different sound. So it means when one is playing the bow and you are alternating the positions where you are hitting the string, the longer side and the shorter side, you will get different musical tunes. So I think this is how they were doing it in Namibia, whereas in South Africa, mostly the enhancement of sound was as a result of the resonator. We can move on to the next slide. So this slide is showing a painting from Atapaskloof site in the Karoo. So as you can see on this slide, you realize that the three people on the left are four. They seem to be dancing, and the three individuals are in a bending posture. And there is one image where you can see that the person is holding something which looks like a pipe or a flute. And when you look at their hands, you realize that they are holding something which looks like they are holding gold rattles. So from this image, we can say that bone pipes are also evident in the rock art deficiency as well as gold rattles. So it's interesting to note that there are no gold rattles that have been recovered archaeologically. But however, we can note that from the rock paintings that gold rattles were used in the past. So in this sense, rock art comes in as a source of music archaeology, because some of the things that we cannot recover archaeologically, they are there in the rock art. So they are documented in rock art, and then rock art is being used as a source of music archaeology. We can move on to the next slide. This slide is showing more examples of people that are playing bone flutes. So on my left, there is a person who is playing a flute but is lying down. If you see the circle, you will realize that there are two hands holding a pipe or a flute. And then on the other image, if you look at the black circle, you will realize that um, this person is holding like two pipes. So this is a practice that is known, has been practiced, where someone has got about two or three pipes, playing them at the same time. So in most cases, these pipes will be different in height, and then the sound which they produce as well will be different. So you will have different tunes coming out of the two or three flutes. So this is some of the evidence from the Western Cape in the Cedar Bay, where there is evidence of people that are playing flutes from the rock art. So maybe one might add that it is not surprising that we also find some bone tubes from the later Stone Age context, which could be somehow dated to the same time, arguably, with the rock art. We can move on to the next slide. So in conclusion, I will say that there is evidence of music and sound production from the archaeological record of Southern Africa in form of physical artifacts as well as musical instruments depictions in the rock art. But however, we will realize that preservation is a stumbling block for the recovery of musical instruments from the archaeological record, because most of the musical instruments are made of organic material which easily decompose, and they do not survive long in the archaeological record. And the other point is that music archaeology in Southern Africa is still developing. Like I said earlier, that in some parts of the world it is a fully fledged discipline, and I'm sure it is even taught even in universities. But however, in Southern Africa, it is something that is still developing. Um, we can move on to the next slide. The next one. The next one. Yeah, thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation, and I just want to acknowledge all these individuals and all these organizations, and a special thanks to the Southern African Archaeological Student Council for having me. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Josh, for your presentation.
Thank you, Mpumi. I couldn't hear you quite well, but I heard like you were asking that the whistles that have got, is it perforation? Were they being carried around?
Yeah, were they being carried around or you're not sure?
I think the way I see it, I think the perforation was used for putting a string, and then someone would carry the whistles around, because the size of the whistles themselves, they are too small. So I think if they didn't do that, they could easily get lost. So I think it was for easier carrying them around, as well as for securing them. So if you have it, you can just put it between, or maybe weigh around your neck or something like that. So from my personal communication with CN, who is the curator at the of Pretoria Museum, he said that he has once come across the Lesotho in Lesotho. Lesotho herders who were herding cattle. I think they had similar kind of of whistles with the same that I showed you during my presentation. So she was saying that it seems as if Lesotho, they have got similar kind of whistle, but it's something that I think follow up further.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Tatenda, do you have a question?
Okay, thank you very much, Josh, for this wonderful presentation. Actually, I have learned a lot because for quite some time I didn't know that there is a section called Archaeology of Music. You know, I only saw it in the American archaeology, and here in Southern Africa is something which is quite interesting because when you think of it, you look at our modern day life, you know, a lot of people, they actually say music is life. But when we go back to the past and try to study that past, it seems like we are omitting that aspect of music, that aspect of the social activities, which include different aspects of music. And I actually loved the fact that you highlighted some aspects related to the user analysis, where it's, you know, it's been a syndrome which is affecting particularly Southern African archaeology, where we are using form to determine the function of a certain thing, function of a certain artifact. But, you know, using user analysis to understand the actual functions of different objects is quite important and quite crucial. So I actually loved this presentation. And maybe just a question is like, what are we expecting like in future in as far as the archaeology of music is concerned? What are we expecting? Are we going to see more developments in as far as this discipline is concerned? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tatenda. I think music archaeology has got a potential to grow in Southern Africa, but it cannot grow when it's just me alone. So I would hope that maybe at some point there might be some other people maybe doing honors, masters, or PhD who might venture into this research. But what I can say is where is the potential of developing music archaeological studies? You know what happens with museums? Most museums, they are full materials that have been excavated from long time ago and they are just being stored there. And most people, they don't even know the stuff that are in the museum. So the next thing that I will focus on is to do a systematic survey of music related artifacts from various museums across Southern Africa. You will find out that when one do proper research, you might be actually surprised that there are music related artifacts that are sitting somewhere in the museums, but it's only that we do not know that they are there, and also that we never ask these questions if there are any music related artifacts that have been recovered from the archaeological record. So this is where the potential for music archaeology is. There is still more that can be found. And also on the other side of archaeoacoustics, which is the study of how sound is transmitted maybe in a space, or looking at how people in the past were influenced by sound. You realize that in Europe, archaeoacoustic studies the the big research field actually, if I may say so. So, for example, what has been happening in rock art studies in Europe, most the researchers have gone to Paleolithic caves where there are paintings, and they were trying to research on the link between sound transmission and the position where you will find depictions in a cave. So most of the Paleolithic caves, they are dark inside, but they've got paintings. So most researchers have revealed that when one goes into the cave chamber, if they sing or maybe play something that produces sound, you will realize that the location where rock art is the point where the cave experiences much echo as compared to other positions within the cave. So they got to a point where they said that the choice of painting art during the Paleolithic was influenced by sound transmission. So where you will find more echo or more reverberation in the cave, that's where you find that there are some depictions there. Whereas they might have left some nice flat surfaces within the cave, which were mostly suitable for painting. So this is one of the arguments that has come out from Paleolithic rock art studies, that people who made art during the Paleolithic were much influenced by sound transmission. Where you get more echo, that's the location which they preferred to paint. The reason behind that, it is not known, but researchers are convinced that the reason why they painted in these spots, they were mostly influenced by sound transmission. So it is interesting if people could also do the same in Southern Africa. Are we going to get similar results if we go to caves and then we do archaeoacoustic studies where we either play sound and then test where do we find much echo in that cave? Is it where we find the paintings, or somewhere else where there are no paintings within the cave? So archaeoacoustic studies is one of the areas that is interesting, but it requires training for one to do that. So even myself, I'm not a trained archaeoacoustic. I have interest in it, but I am not trained. So it's an area where maybe archaeologists can collaborate with people from music who understand the aspects of sound engineering and who can also measure sound. I think maybe people can come up with interesting results, but yeah, it's something which also needs funding. So that can only happen if we have like a fully fledged discipline within Southern Africa. So these are some of the things which people can do, but for now, I think we are still too far for us to do that.
All right, thank you so much, Josh. I see Precious has a question.
All right. Thank you so much, Josh, for the beautiful presentation and for informing us on archaeomusicology. We are learning a lot. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can.
All right. Okay. So I was saying thank you so much for the beautiful presentation, and we learned so much on music and evidence of music in the archaeological record. That is so interesting because we have very, very few research from this period. from this section of study. My question is on the slide that you were giving us some context, like the importance of musical instruments within rock art and trance dance. And I was just wondering that a lot of people are no longer subscribing to the trans hypothesis, especially in Southern Africa, with new interpretation or new hypothesis coming in, like the social hypothesis. So I was just wondering, so where will you, where do you stand as a researcher when you are venturing into the world where there are a lot of debates? People are saying, no, these depictions are not trans depictions, and others are saying these depictions, probably they are depicting their social way of life. Maybe they are depicting people dancing during a ritual ceremony or just some celebration ceremonies, not just that they were in trance. So, where do you stand with this all this? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Precious. I will admit, yeah, this is a difficult question, but I think I subscribe to both schools of thought. In some cases, I agree that rock art can be showing trans dances, and also in some cases there is an aspect of a social dimension that we find in rock art, because like what I was saying, that we can say yes, it is a trans dance. The trans dance will be the end result, but where it begins, it's a social setting where people are gathering, they are singing, and they are dancing. And sometimes the trance dance can be the final result of people just singing and dancing, maybe for leisure, and then people end up getting into trance. I will say this in relation to what I know in terms of when people are doing like ancestral veneration ceremonies. Back home, when I was growing up, people who normally do these things would do them at night. So the whole night, people will be playing drums, playing what do you call it, lira, and they will be singing, clapping, and dancing. And then they say only around the early hours of the morning, that's when the person who I think who gets into another um, I can't find a suitable word, who gets into another realm, if I can say so. The person who communicates with on behalf of the ancestor. That's when they might get into another realm around 8 hours of the morning. So imagine what would be happening from the beginning of the ceremony, where people are just dancing, singing, and are enjoying themselves. And then the last part, that is where someone goes into trance or goes into another realm. So can we say that the beginning of the process is not entertainment? Because when people are singing and they are dancing, it means they are enjoying themselves. But the end result, it might be trans. So I think it depends as to whether people doing it for entertainment, or they have a specific goal that we have to sing and dance until certain individuals going to trans. So I think I stand with both school of thought to say there is an aspect of spiritual beliefs in the rock art, and also there is a social dimension that we find in the rock art. For example, I will give an example of and the Koya people. I think it was Peter Thunberg who was a traveler who traveled around South Africa. He realized that the Koya people in the Southern Cape, around the Eastern Cape area, every day, like he puts it in his chronicles, they would sing and dance at night, every day without fail, especially when there is a full moon. So it shows that music and dance was part and parcel of their daily life, which is a social dimension. But at some point, he mentioned that at some point, these people would turn into what he calls a violent, wild desperation. So I think that phrase that he used, it might mean someone who would have gone into a trance. But if you look at it the way it starts with entertainment, then in some cases someone may go into violent, wild desperation, which could be trance. So I think it's on both sides when we look at rock art. It can have some depictions which might be spiritual. And I also subscribe to the social dimension part of rock art. For example, I would say the way musical instruments depictions are depicted in the art. It's a musical bow, but the interpretation that we get is that the depictions show the rain shaman playing musical board. That is rock art. So in my mind, I just think, so does it mean that a musical bow is only restricted to a rain shaman when people can play musical boards for entertainment? So that's the kind of the social aspect which comes into play when one looks at rock art. Even if you look when at the musical boards depicted in Namibia, some of the interpretations were that the people would play the bows while they are hunting. So you are passing time tapping onto your bowstring while you are hunting, and that was depicted in the art. So that form of social life, which is also being portrayed in rock art. So I think I subscribe to both. That, of course, there can be some element of trance in rock art, but not always the case. It's not always the case that every image might be related to trance. So I think I subscribe to both schools of thought to say there could be some element of trance and then there could be some element of a social dimension. I don't know if I managed to to answer that one.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.